Welcome, everybody. I think we better start, um, and we'll see who kind of drops in. Um, so, welcome. Um, Grassroots conference call for February. Um, yeah, we the year's started good and proper. Hope you're all well, and that some of you are having success with your booking meetings with MPs. Obviously, that's this month's campaign action, but we're talking about that a little bit more later on. So, if this is anyone's first time on a results monthly call, then very big welcome to you. I'm Naveed Chowdhury. I'm the head of campaigns at Results UK. I can't see if we have got any new people or not yet, but if we have, welcome. Um, so the usual housekeeping messages then. Um, Please keep yourself muted during the call. If you have got any questions or comments, then if you can put them in the chat, we'll try and look at them there. Captions are turned on, so if you want to use them, please do, using the Zoom toolbar. And we're recording the call, so if you don't want to be in the video, please feel free to turn your video off. And if anyone else would like to say hello and welcome, that just say hello to everybody, then please do.
I'm supposed to say hello.
Hello, I'm Mark. I'm Stephanie's husband.
Hello, Mark. Nice to see you.
Along to see what happens. Yeah, good to see you.
And for those who haven't met Stephanie, she's our head of operations at Results in
Hi.
sort of Office Supremo, amongst other things.
Mm.
um, Welcome. Anyone else want to say hello before we get going? I'm slightly confused. We've got these AI meeting notes. I hope they're not going to talk to us, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so as usual, I will be doing some updates on things in the news that are relevant to Results' advocacy on global poverty issues. And then we'll get onto the usual roundup of your kind of activities and then introduce our guest speaker, who will hopefully show up. So, firstly, we were concerned to see a report about a week ago or so that the Development Minister, Baroness Chapman, is considering abolishing ICAI, the Independent Commission on Aid Impact. I don't know if any of you saw that story. So for those of you who haven't come across this body, its job is to scrutinise the UK's international development spending for its effectiveness and value for money. And they conduct regular inquiries and they report to the Parliament International Development Committee. So that's that cross-party group of MPs whose role is to scrutinise the government's international development plans. I will just put a link to ICAI's kind of website in case that's of any interest. So Baroness Chapman's suggestion is apparently, as far as the reporting goes, that with a much smaller aid budget, we should expect to reduce the amount of resources spent on scrutinising it. Now, at Result, we take the opposite view. ICAI was brought in by a former Conservative Development Minister, Andrew Mitchell, to make sure that the UK public could be confident that taxpayers' money was being spent wisely. And years of attacks on aid spending in the media, I'm sure many of you remember that, had quite reasonably, I think, led many people to doubt that that was the case. So the body was created, ICAI was created. As I say, we disagree with Baroness Chapman's suggestion. With less money to spend on international development under the new reduced budget, it's more important than ever, it seems to me, that it's as effective as possible. And removing a watchdog and the amount of transparency that exists is going to be counterproductive and likely to reduce still further the amount of public support and confidence. It is not, as far as we know, official government policy yet. So we're not asking people to take action directly at this stage. If you feel strongly about it, then of course it's something you may choose to alert your MP to. And the idea has already been objected to on behalf of many organisations in our sector by Bond, the umbrella body for international development organisations in the UK. And I'm going to post a link to a media article that covers this issue. It was in The Guardian, we saw it, as well as the response to that piece from Bond. which is just a kind of just a press release, actually. So if you're interested in that, have a look. We don't think it's a good idea. Hopefully, it won't happen. So moving on to sort of matters aid-wise. Oh, sorry, just letting in our speaker. So following up, on aid generally, as you know, the UK is not the only wealthy country pulling back from its international development obligations, with many donors scaling back their official development assistance budgets. I have just seen a very concerning report from the One campaign about the very latest data on the state of development finance across the whole globe. And what it shows is that with donors retreating and with increasing debt burdens, many lower income countries really are unsurprisingly finding that there's much less room to maneuver when they're trying to find public funding to build up their health services or their education systems, for example. Again, I'm going to put a link in the chat to that research, which I found very useful, very scary, but useful. It's not very long. Summary of the data isn't very long, and it's a really fascinating glimpse of just how quickly the world is changing in terms of international development cooperation and where the money is coming from. And I think this really fits in with the topic of this evening, and it's a topic that we're very much needing to engage in. And we're going to hear a bit more about this from our guest speaker a little later on the call. So I'm just popping that data in the channel, in the chat box now, in case you want to take a look. And all of these links, if you want to see them and don't catch them during the call, they'll all be in the description box when we put the video up on the website. So this shows that we really do need to review the world's economic systems, which plays a really big role in keeping many countries poorer than they should be, of course, as well as shoring up the power of vested interests of wealthy countries. Now, ever since the general election, the government has been saying they want to address this issue, and they're planning a conference in June. So that's not the development conference we're asking you to consider campaigning on this month, which will happen in May, but a second conference. Now, at this stage, we know very little about it. And I'm sure we're going to come back to this topic of the economics of development and development financing as the way that things work continues to evolve. Next, and not to be too depressing, I hope, is confirmation last week by the US administration of its withdrawal from a vast number of UN bodies and other international cooperation mechanisms as apparently not being in their national interest as they see it. Now, this includes some that have been publicly announced previously, such as the Paris Climate Agreement and the World Health Organization. But unfortunately, we now discover that they will no longer support Education Cannot Wait, which some of you will remember is the body that supports the provision of education in emergencies. So conflict situations, for example. This is of real concern. And as well as putting bodies like that under strain, it does add further concern about the rolling back of the idea of multilateral cooperation that underpins the gains that have been made in international development for the last 2 decades. And all of this does risk being undone. Now, no official reason has been given for this withdrawal. And again, I'll put a link to that announcement. There's a whole list of organizations that they released information about just a few days ago. On a much more positive note, Results was very pleased to be able to support MPs in a debate in Westminster Hall about global education. So this was to mark the International Day of Education on the 24th of February. And we got several MPs to speak and spoke passionately, in fact, in favour of the UK's ongoing support for education around the world. Now, this included Andrew Rossendale, the Conservative MP who's just defected to Reform. And I think he's Andrew's constituency MP. So Andrew's on the call today. So it just goes to show, I suppose, that you can't always make assumptions about party politics. But we had politicians from across the board. Labour MP Bambos Charalambos tabled the debate, and he's someone we work with very closely for some time now and is a big parliamentary champion on global education. So this is a good start to 2026 because, as you know, we're going to be campaigning in just a few months on the replenishment for the Global Partnership for Education, which is the UK, of which the UK is the single biggest owner. I think that's really it from me from this sort of initial roundup. I'm going to hand over to Will now for the roundup of your advocacy around the UK, and then we'll introduce our speakers. So over to you, Will.
Thanks, David. Good evening, everyone. I hope my light over my head isn't too bright. It looks like I've just had an idea. But yeah, first, a big thanks to everyone for your actions, and to Deirdre from Poole for sharing her response to the letter on the government's International Development Conference, which we're discussing this evening. Deirdre wasn't able to arrange a visit, but sent a letter instead, which got a very positive and prompt response from her MP, who is a Liberal Democrat. Deirdre shared this with us on our online I Took Action form, which is really helpful for us because it means we can track MP engagement with our topics. So thank you very much, Deirdre. And I think Naveed is just putting the link to our action form in the chat. And aside from Deirdre, has anybody else had any joy with their correspondence or arranging a meeting with their MP so far this year? No problem if you haven't.
Will, can I just say why I wrote rather than trying to arrange a meeting? I decided to do that because I'd had such difficulty getting a meeting with my MP last year. So I thought rather than do nothing, I would write. And actually, she was very prompt in replying. That's
great. Yeah, and I think that's, I guess, speaks to continued advocacy because you understand how best to get through, I guess. So well done for that. And yeah, and I guess just keep going to everyone else. So I think the Results Online group had a really interesting discussion on visiting MPs at their January meeting. As many of you know, it's far easier to meet MPs as a group so that you can divide up responsibilities and agree who will say what and support each other. However, as the online group members all live in different places around the UK, that doesn't work in the same way. So does anyone in the group want to share on what the current thinking is about meeting MPs as a group? Anyone that was on the January online group?
Yeah, I was in the group meeting, so I think we got to the idea that perhaps a couple of us, although we're dispersed across the country, it might be possible for a couple of us to travel if we were successful in getting an appointment or some time to meet with our MP or my MP or one of our MPs. So I think we got to the point that if we could get some time, I think we would make the effort to try and travel so that we could meet as a group.
Perfect. That sounds great. And thanks for sharing that, Tony. And obviously, if anyone needs advice on visiting your MP, which I'm sure many of you don't, but if you do, there's a really useful guide on our website, which again, Naveed's just posted in the chat. So yeah, do take a read of that. And then lastly from me, I'd like to flag an online event, which is coming up this Sunday, the 8th of February, called the Results International Learning Exchange. It's an online meeting, and the aim is to enable Results grassroots volunteers from around the world to meet and share their experience of advocacy and to learn from each other. We don't get many opportunities to do this, and I really think it'll be kind of a motivating and informative to meet volunteers from other countries where Results work. Many of the volunteers will be from North America, where obviously Results is numerically very strong, but I think a few from the UK will be there, which is really nice. It is a bit late on a Sunday evening, so it's not ideal timing, but we needed to find a time that would work for as many time zones as possible. So if you'd like to attend, you can sign up again using the link that Naveed's just shared in the chat box. So that's this Sunday the 8th. So thank you very much, for everyone, for what we've done this month.
Thanks, Will. And whilst we're on the topic of international learning exchanges, I do want to say a welcome to Lisa Marshall, who's joining our call today. There she is, waving. Hello, Lisa. Lisa's just joining us to listen in and find out what's going on in the UK. I think she helps support the Results Volunteer Network in the US. I don't know if you wanted to say a word. You don't have to.
Thank you for allowing me to sit in. It's a pleasure.
Lovely to have you here, and do join in on our conversations later as we get into the topic. So let's get into it then. So the topic of this evening's discussion, as you know, is this International Development Conference, which is being hosted in May by the UK government. For those of you who joined our call on the 13th of January, you heard from our Head of Parliamentary Advocacy, Lucy Drescher, about why we feel the need to engage with any conversations about how international development is changing and why now is an opportunity to gain support of MPs on this topic. And we think that this is about helping shift global power dynamics for the better. So that's power dynamics around who has access to resources needed for poverty reduction, for equitable and sustainable economic development, that kind of thing. So things have been moving very fast since that last monthly meeting, and since the 13th of January, organisations working on international development, coordinated by Bond, have had a meeting with the Development Minister and her team, and as a result, we know quite a lot more now about what they're thinking, and so that's why we're having a second call on the same topic. And so to lead us through this, I'm absolutely delighted to introduce Gideon Rabinowitz, who is the Director of Policy and Advocacy at Bond. For those of you who've been around for a few years, you might just remember that Gideon's spoken on this call before, back in summer 2017, in fact, I had to check, when we were concerned about attacks in the media on the UK's overseas development spending. At that time, Gideon was Policy Manager on Development Finance at Oxfam, and previously Gideon has researched aid issues at the Overseas Development Institute. And at Bond, he's been leading the coordination of organisations. I'm sure he's been doing many other things as well, but he's been leading the coordination of organisations like us who wish to try and engage with this development conference. So that makes him the absolutely ideal person to be here on the call and to give us the latest information about what's going on. So, Gideon, are you on the call? I think I saw you joining us. You are.
Yeah,
Hello.
I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Good.
Yeah. Welcome. A big
Thank
welcome.
you.
I should say welcome back.
Thank you very much.
So thank you so much.
I hadn't realised the last occasion was so long ago. I remember the exact circumstances of where it was and how it took place, which is very strange. But I hadn't realised it was so long ago. So yeah, Bond is we're the membership organisation for international NGOs in the UK. We're lucky enough to have 350 member organisations, of which Results UK is one of our members, one of our very valued members. And my job is to try, well, firstly, to help the sector to sort of gain access to decision makers, both in government and in Parliament, but also to support our members to collaborate together, to engage those stakeholders and to influence them. And the more we can collaborate and work together with common messages, common ideas, common proposals, the more successful we're going to be in securing impact. So that is I'm very lucky to have that job. It's not an easy one, but it's a very exciting place to work and to get a chance to work with a group of varied organisations. So this conference, I'm sure you'll have had.
Can I just hold it there, Gideon, just for a second? Yeah. So we're going to have some. I think you're expecting a couple of prepared questions for us. Yeah. So if I just want to say, obviously, you've been on the call before. I hadn't realised also that it was as long ago as 2017. But as you know, you're on the call with some really committed campaigners from right around the UK, from Scotland in the north to our Pool Group in the south. And so, if we can start off with the first of our three questions, and then we'll sort of pick up anything that you haven't covered in your initial answers and open the floor to whatever people want to ask you. So if it's okay to do it this way, can I start off with a question from our online group?
Yeah, I think that's me.
Hi,
Um,
Tony.
yeah, hi Gideon. So my question is that last month on the call, results told us about the International Development Conference that the government's planning. So the question is, what's the latest information that you have about this?
Hmm. So yeah, I've got plenty to update you on. So it looks like the conference will now be in mid-May. So the latest that we hear is the date of well, they're looking at 2 days, a 2 day conference. The first day is like a working level, sort of more technical uh, day of discussions, and then on the 19th of May would be this what they call the Principals Day, which is where the senior officials, the leaders of sort of the delegations that are there get together um, to have some discussions. And what we hear is that the government is planning some sort of compact out of this conference, which is essentially a set of principles that the attendees sort of agree are important for the future of development cooperation, and which they hope everyone in attendance will go away and prioritize and implement in some way as they move forward. So they've identified 8 priority sessions or strands for the conference itself. Some of these won't surprise you, but some may sort of you may have some more questions on. Health remains a high level priority for the government, as does humanitarian assistance. Climate and nature is a priority. Fiscal resilience, and I think what they mean by this is in general supporting countries to be able to generate more of their own tax revenues, their own resources to fund their own development. Private capital mobilization. This is a sort of priority agenda for the government. What part of their narrative right now is that they may be giving less aid, but they think they can make that aid go further in using it to attract private capital, private investment, foreign investment into lower middle income countries to help their development. It's quite a challenging topic, in some ways a controversial one, but that's something they're eager to prioritize. Artificial intelligence. So technology and artificial intelligence is something the government is looking to prioritize, and they want to involve tech companies and the tech sector in this conference. Violence against women and girls. This has emerged as a priority for the new Foreign Secretary. She's made a high-level statement on this recently, Yvette Cooper, and that's a priority for the conference. And then migration. So this is a top priority across government. They're obviously trying to deal with the challenge of small boats and irregular migration, and they want to have some discussion around migration issues linked to development. And then around the compact, what we hear that they are looking to base this around is 9 sort of principles. And I'm going to put these. I think I can put these in the chat. Won't go into too much depth about these. Some of them are quite self-explanatory. Others are a little unclear. But the first one is they're calling clear purpose, having partnerships that are based around a clear framing of desired outcomes. Mutual interest, respect, and trust is the second principle.
I don't see them. I don't see them in the chat.
I'm about to.
Oh, sorry. I'm typing. I stopped typing
Okay.
because I thought you were going to do it for
I'll
me.
put these in. Mutual respect and trust.
There they go.
Streamlined. One is clear purpose. Mutual interest, respect, and trust. So trying to establish relationships based on clear foundations. Accountability is the third one. The fourth one is a bit techie, but essentially what they're saying is that governments like the UK and the international institutions should be working through the institutions of low middle income countries rather than setting up their own projects, sort of parallel to the health and education systems of countries. Number 5, we're very excited about and interested in, which is increasing power for those most affected, people first governance, decisions, budgets and oversight to be informed by those most effective. Number 6 is providing finance that is predictable and transparent. Number 7 is this issue that I was talking about earlier, which is finding ways to improve the way that aid is used to catalyse and promote other forms of finance. That's something that the government's really eager to focus on. Generating knowledge, data and technology as global goods. And then the final one is around shared risk and resilience. So those are the sort of basic parameters of what they are looking to discuss and agree at the conference. I suppose I'll leave it there in response to your first question, and hopefully some other issues will come up as we continue.
That's really useful start, Gideon. Thank you very much. I think, yeah, as Deirdre said in the chat, that is a lot. So all of those themes and then all of those principles, I think, you know, some of them, yeah, they take a lot of unpacking. There's a lot of detail in all of those. And, you know, we could probably have a whole conference call on each of those if we wanted to. But I hope you can see that there's a lot of potentially very good stuff in there if they get it right, but also some stuff that we don't, you know, we don't want to be just lip service, and we don't want to it to, I think, as we said in our campaign materials that we've just sent to you, we don't want it to sort of detract from the UK's responsibilities and give them an excuse to kind of pull out, as it were. But we'll unpack any of those insofar as we can, insofar as we know about them in some of the later questions. So I'm going to move on to the second question, which I think was coming from the pool group.
Yeah.
Oh, who said yes? Hello? Oh, Deirdre, you're speaking. You're on mute. Sorry.
Right, we got it. Sorry.
No problem.
Sorry. Hi, Gideon. Second question is, what would a successful conference, or indeed an unsuccessful conference, look like? And secondly, what difference do you think it could all make, if anything?
That is a fine question, and one which I wish I had a little bit more time to sort of lay out my thoughts, and also to sort of just, you know, debate with you all. I think it would be useful for us to have a bit of a backwards and forwards about this. So, you know, I'm gonna be frank. We're still trying to get a clear sense of exactly what the government wants to achieve with this conference. Having so many themes and so many principles makes it hard to understand what is the core thing they want to get out of this. And I must be honest and frank, we're still discussing it in the sector. What is the best way for us to make a success out of this? I think, you know, there are sort of broadly 2 tracks that we could sort of go down in terms of thinking about how to engage around and make the best out of this conference. The first is the sort of more technical, the more sort of policy focused, and that is, you know, engaging with what they want to agree from the conference with the official stakeholders, and they've made significant progress in developing this compact, and they're going to share a draft version with us and with our members over the next couple of weeks. And there is an opportunity for us to shape how those principles are taken forward, and essentially what it is that the attendees at the conference, which are going to include governments, civil society, private sector, foundations, and as the government sort of informed us recently, they really want to engage tech and AI and the sort of innovation space as well. Having something really robust in terms of, you know, principles that are important for the future development cooperation would be quite valuable. And you know, I think as I said in presenting those principles, I think the one that we're most excited at in Bonn, which is a priority of ours, and which we think sort of often gets neglected and doesn't get enough attention in the development community, is around shifting the power. if we have less resources than ever in the development cooperation, well, not less resources than ever, if resources on the decline, we need to make sure that more of it gets down to the grassroots, to local organizations quicker and more efficiently and more flexibly than ever. We're no longer in a situation where we can accept unnecessary bureaucracy, unnecessary transaction costs, loss of resource and inefficiency at the top of the system where the money is provided and where it's managed before it heads into the system. We need to make sure that the flow of resources is as efficient and effective as possible, and that we make sure an ever increasing share of it is taken away from the sort of, the intermediate actors, the ones that manage and move the money around, to get to those that need the resources the most. And those groups really need more authority, more power, more influence over how that money is used, so it can respond to their own needs. So we're looking. One of our core priorities is to focus in on that particular principle, what gets committed to and agreed as a part of how that principle is taken forward, and ensure that is as robust and transformative as possible. So, and you could say the same for any of those principles. What we want is that those principles are agreed to in the most sort of robust, ambitious, and effective way. I suppose the other strand of this that you could look at, and I've been spending quite a bit of time discussing with colleagues what we could do in this space, is there an opportunity for this conference to be a moment to better engage the UK public around development cooperation and why it's important? There's been a lot of soul searching in our sector amongst our members over the last year. I mean, it's amazing to think we're almost a year since Keir Starmer announced the aid cuts, which are being implemented between now and 2027. One of the things that the announcement of the aid cuts exposed is that we need to be doing much more to engage the public, to make the case for why our government and our country should be creating more links and transferring more resources to lower middle income countries to help tackle development challenges. And we need to do much more to work with brilliant campaigns groups like your own, to equip them and empower them, strengthen them to be engaging the wider public, and making the case for why it is important that the UK as a whole continues to play an active role in working with countries across the world to help them tackle the fundamental challenges that they face and some of the shared challenges that we face. And I think, one of the things we could be doing around this conference is using it as an opportunity to showcase, promote, and tell the stories of all the amazing things that are happening across the country, in communities all across the country, in organizations that, are based and founded in the UK, to connect people in the UK to those living in low and middle income countries, to help support them to pursue a more hopeful and optimistic future, and also to link us in tackling common challenges. And so, one of the things we could be doing is using this conference and all the activity around it as a platform for better engaging the UK public.
This is a great place to stop and move to our third question, which I think is coming from Scotland. It should follow on nicely, I think.
It's Karen from Scotland.
Hi, Karen.
So, hello there. How do you think we can get our MPs to take an interest in this conference, and what should they do?
Oh, okay. So, I mean, to be honest, this is something that we're still discussing. In fact, we have a meeting this Thursday with our members to sort of discuss the latest on this conference and to continue our planning about how we collaborate together. I mean, I think there are, as I said, there are diverse things that we can do around this conference. Some of what you can engage your MP on is about helping to send a message to the government that this conference should agree sort of a really ambitious set of priorities and principles that should be at the heart of what the UK does and this conference agrees internationally. But I think one of the most important things that you could do is just use this as use this opportunity to remind them of the support that there is out there amongst the public. So the conference could be an opportunity to organise all across the country, and this is something that we're still sort of trying to plan out and get our head around, engagements with MPs to remind them of the important work that's going on in their constituencies around international development. There are so many local organisations that are doing important things, to remind them of the support there is for international development across their communities, but also to communicate to them that now is not a time for the UK government to step back. It's more important than ever that the UK starts to rebuild its ambitions around international development, both in terms of aid, but also the way they're engaged with the world. As Naveed said, the opportunity the UK has of being one of the most sort of important economic actors globally to be playing a role in reforming the international system so that it tackles things like debt, corporate tax dodging, flows of illegal money that come from low middle income countries into our economy, clean up the city of London. There are so many things that the UK could be doing, could be setting a more ambitious agenda on. And so it's an opportunity to remind them of that and to see, I think, to sort of explore with them and have a conversation about what it is they're interested across that very wide spectrum of policy areas and activities that they would be interested to have an engagement with. And so I think this conference for us is really an opportunity to get out of our bubble, within amongst those who are sort of specialist and sort of regular actors in this space, to be able to widen that sphere of engagement. And it's a real opportunity to sit down with MPs and show them what support there still is, and to discuss with them what action they're prepared to take, whether it be on aid or debt or cleaning up the City of London, that they are prepared to support and collaborate further with community groups like your own. So I wish you luck with taking advantage of that opportunity.
That's a great summary of what we want, and I hope we'll dive into that a little bit more. So we've had a lot of information there, and gosh, we don't know where this is going to go. So we'll open up the floor. I'll just put, as usual, my mobile number in case anyone wants to text a question to 07906 662 571. Haven't anyone texted me for quite a few months, actually, but alternatively, you can just put your question in the chat or do the good old-fashioned open up your mic and just talk. Yeah, lots to give us food for thought. So I see Richard's got his hand up, so I'm going to start with you. Hi, Richard.
Thank you so much, Gideon, for that. A lot of information. Just two very quick points. Why is it now? Maybe you've explained that. And can we go, us grassroots members?
So why is it now? That is a very good question. I think this idea was first proposed not long after the aid cuts were announced, and after the government announced how they would be introduced. And I think part of their thinking for this conference was to recognise that the aid cuts introduce a very significant challenge to the global system and to our efforts to work overseas in support of development. And I think what they were looking to do with this conference was to think about, well, what are the consequences of the decisions that have been made by the UK, by the US? How do we best support the system to change, to reform, to become more efficient, so that we can use this as an opportunity for change and renewal and reform to make the whole system work better. So I think that was very much their thinking was unfortunately, they've contributed to the severe shock that has been created by all these aid cuts. And they wanted to find a way to ensure that we made the system work better and more effectively and more efficiently so that the resource that was remaining could be most effectively used. The other thing that they were looking to do was to ensure that this conference took place, didn't clash with any other international conferences and summits. So they spent a long time looking at where the gap in the calendar was for organising this, and that meant that it was slightly delayed. And unfortunately, there's been a change of foreign secretary since this conference was first proposed, and that delayed things a little bit. So there isn't a precise sort of science behind why they are doing it in May, but it's a combination of those factors that have led to the date that they've chosen.
But can we go? Can we
go?
Please. There's
Oh,
17
can we go?
17 people here who'd like to go. Can you put them on the list?
Well, I think that is definitely something we can take up with the Foreign Office and the people organising this conference. I do know that sort of around the official event, they are having to be quite careful with how many people attend and who gets invited. But there's definitely the potential for us as a sector to think about parallel events and maybe having a small group of representatives from amongst our supporters and our campaigners who maybe get a chance to attend. So there's definitely a few options that we can take forward to explore that idea.
So I think we're talking to the right person here, because Gideon is literally the person who goes and talks to the department about this. So
thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, Richard. And I know that interested members of the public and people in this network have been involved in international conferences at a high level for many years. And so if there were an opportunity for some representatives to go, I know we'd really welcome it. So if you do get the opportunity to raise that on our behalf, we would be very, very grateful. I was going to read out a question from Jill, but I see she has a hand up. So Jill, I'll hand over to you.
Hi there. Thanks very much. That was really good. You mentioned illicit finance flows. Just to mention, one of the things that the public is really concerned about is corruption. And number 4 says about getting the aid money to people on the ground that are actually needing it. Will this, and you mentioned cutting out the middlemen, in a country like Nigeria, where it's in disarray and money gets siphoned off and all the rest of it, how do you think this will be on the agenda for discussion, or just can you open it up a little bit?
So I think it's a very good question without a simple answer. I think one of the concerns of people who are very eager for the aid system to be reformed is that wherever you've got bureaucracy, there is an opportunity for corruption and people to insert themselves for their own benefit. And I think one of the things that you'll automatically help to achieve if you reduce the bureaucracy, you're able to transfer money more directly to the local organizations that are doing the work on the ground, is that you'll be able to sort of reduce opportunities for corruption. And so, I think those two agendas, making the system more efficient, less bureaucratic, and tackling corruption, are intimately related. I think the other thing to mention is, unfortunately, often the wrong approach is taken to sort of concerns about corruption. Often corruption is a driver, creates incentives for creating more bureaucracy. And so one of the reasons why donors put in place so many checks and balances and tests and checks and involve sort of Western intermediary organizations in the chain of organizations delivering aid is because they want to limit corruption. But what that does is it uses up resources in other ways. So the more that you put checks and balances in, the more that you have, let's say, an international organization inserted as a middleman to help manage the funds, that uses up resources in other ways. And so really there's a challenge of finding the right balance between having the right level of oversight, but without it costing too much and without it being a drain on resources in other ways. I think the final thing I would say is, one of the things that is lacking from my perspective, one of the things that is lacking in the aid sector is trust. It's a less and less trusting sector. And I think at the end of the day, when you see surveys of partners in lower middle income countries, when they're asked how do they want to see aid change, they say they want more flexibility. They want more ability to make their own decisions about how resources are used. And they want less sort of top-down direction and bureaucracy that limits their ability to serve their communities. And so we have to be careful that the very legitimate concern around corruption doesn't just become another reason to continue to sort of implement a very inflexible system without strong levels of trust. So we need to get the balance right. One final thing I would mention is, alongside this Development Cooperation Conference, the government is also organising a summit on illicit financial flows in July. And this is aiming to address some of the key questions about how do you reduce the flow of illegal money flows from lower middle income countries into countries like the UK. The UK, through the City of London, is one of the main sort of locations of where money flows to from corrupt practices overseas. And so we've got to deal with the challenge at both ends. There's no point in sort of making a system in the global south that is less corrupt if our financial services sector, our banks, our financial system is continuing to try and drag and drain money from these countries. So we need to address it at both ends.
Thanks, Gideon. And yeah, those kind of flows can potentially, massively outweigh any good done by relatively small aid flows. I mentioned at the top of the call there was going to be a conference in June. I'm guessing that's the same one and it's been moved back.
Maybe it's June. I thought it was July. June or July, yeah.
We'll keep you up to speed on that, because that's going to be obviously. I've mentioned on this call before that we are going to be releasing a report on illicit financial flows, so we'll need to keep an eye on that other conference as well. So we'll get back to you on that. On the topic of updating you, I see a question in the chat from Pete. When Bond gets the update on the compact, will the network be updated? Obviously, we'll update you as soon as we know. But Gideon, do you know anything about what you know about the compact?
As soon as we get it, I mean, to be honest, they did tell us about 3 weeks ago that we would be getting it in a couple of weeks, and it hasn't appeared yet. So my boss, the CEO of Bond, is meeting the conference organizer in FCDO on Thursday, and that's one of the questions we're going to be asking is, what's the timeline on that? And as soon as we get it, it will go straight out to members.
Great, thank you. So just to let people know, our CEO, Kitty, has been closely involved in this and been getting the information that's been coming from Bond and from Gideon. And so we've been able to then put that out into our action materials as far as we know them. So that's why this month we've got some more information that we didn't have last month. In terms of updating it, what we're probably going to be doing, and I'm kind of making this up now a little bit, is probably just put new information on the existing web page with this campaign action. So the one we emailed out to you recently, we've already put some of the information that Gideon's given you about the themes of the conference and kind of the sort of types of principle that it's going to be adopting, and so that whenever you've got a meeting with your MP, you'll have the latest that we know will be there. So I'm assuming that could be where we put the compact rather than emailing you every time a new piece of information comes out. But we'll work on the best how, just so that when you do get your meetings, you'll have the latest information possible. And obviously there's so many topics, I'm sure any MP will find something to, that they're particularly interested in. So use it as you will. or just get in touch and ask any questions if you don't see what you need, I would say. Stephanie, you have your hand up.
Hi, it's very quick. I just wondered if there was a venue agreed yet.
No, good question.
Yeah.
So, I don't think there is. The meeting we had with the minister a few weeks ago, she'd suddenly floated with her team the idea of hosting it at Google. She's very into the idea of technology and AI being a really cool part of this. And she says she wants to make it a really exciting, engaging conference. She doesn't want it to be a traditional conference. They don't want it to just be sort of stuffy meetings with, discussing technical things. They want it, what she said was, she wants the way it looks and feels to be as important as what gets discussed. And so she'd floated with her team the idea of hosting it at Google. I don't think they'd approached Google about this idea, and I don't think it had been seriously considered yet. But that is just to say that that is one of the finer details that is still to be worked out, I understand.
Thank you. I'm sure there's a lot to come. I mean, it feels like the middle of May is not far away, and they've got a lot of work to do, but I'm sure we'll find out as things develop. I see a question in the chat from Pete. Pete saying, in your view, you think that we would have most impact with the public if we focus on the immigration side. Do you want to say a little bit more about that opportunity? Because I'm not quite sure I follow your I might not be quite understanding the second part of your comment.
Yes, I'm growing to the idea that it's not a good soundbite, but it seems like we're hoarding opportunity in the West and sequestering it. We're making sure that we've got enough, and our very wealthiest are making damn sure they've got enough, and the people in sub-Saharan Africa, wherever, the Far East, who'd have nothing, they have no opportunity, so they're coming to us to seek their opportunity. So I'm seeing opportunity as the key here. Does that make any sense?
Yes, I think it does. I think one of the most important ways that through relationships across the world, we can provide ways for people to progress and develop and further their lives is giving them opportunities in our countries and to work overseas, to send money back home and experience new economic opportunities. Unfortunately, I don't think that is exactly where the government is coming from on this issue right now. And I think one of the things that we would need to do around the issue of migration is to be trying to promote a more balanced, more open and progressive agenda on migration. Because to be frank, I think what the government sort of intends by putting it on the agenda is to think about what is the ways in which our aid and development cooperation can be part of the effort to reduce illegal migration, irregular migration, and to tackle the small boats problem. Because I know that senior officials in the Foreign Office are regularly called into the Home Office to have conversations with ministers there about how they can be part of the effort to tackle that particular challenge, which is one of the top priorities of the government right now.
Yeah, sorry, just to continue. Thank you for that response. My approach was to do with the angle of approaching the public on the issue. Where I started this work with results and earlier was the idea that we wanted to end hunger and poverty. And the whole issue of development is around that, as far as I'm concerned. And what's happening is that, yes, the data is showing that hunger and poverty is reducing globally, but migration is increasing. I'm seeing as the very poorest are having their opportunities taken away from them. They're having less and less hope for themselves, so they want to come here. So that's the angle, was that the public understands that they want to see immigration reduced. And my argument would be, if you want to see immigration reduced, end hunger and poverty. It's naive, but that's kind of where I came in. So that's my approach, is how do we approach the public?
Thank you, Pete. I just want to flag up there that I think by raising this with MPs, inevitably this is going to come up for some of them. And so it might be an idea for people to have a think about how they want to take this argument, preparing for, those meetings. You can't talk about all of the themes, but thinking about how you feel about the connection between migration and development may be one of the things you want to talk about. It may not be.
Can
Kathy,
I just say, I put something in the chat. I don't need to talk about it, but if you just have a look at that, because it's a report that the Food and Fisheries have produced, and it says a lot about the knock-on effects of not dealing with poverty in the developing world and how it's going to affect our security. It's just a sort of one-off. Have a look at it.
Thanks, Jill. Yeah, I can see the link there. Thank you very much. Kathy, I think you might be the last question. Over to you.
Right. I apologize. This is just a quick one, really, because actually I'm just curious to find out, is the aid budget being used for this conference? Because it seems to me that if we're talking about reducing bureaucracy, this doesn't really, it suggests people that are already quite comfortably off receiving more hospitality and what have you. So just, it's a very frivolous one, really.
So I'm pretty sure that in some way the cost of the conference will be charged back to the aid budget. I think that's why it's important that we ensure that they make the best use of this conference possible, and that we use the opportunity as best as possible as well. I think there is a bit of a question about how much we want them to spend and invest on this, because one of the challenges that we pointed out to the government is, if they want to have a proper conversation, a legitimate conversation about the future of the development cooperation system, they shouldn't just be doing this with sort of people based in the UK or even our European partners. They need to be ensuring that representatives from countries across Africa and Asia are part of the conversation. And we don't want them just to have governments there. We want them to have community organizations, civil society, representatives of the communities that they're trying to support. So one of the things we are reminding the government consistently when we meet with them is, this can't be a sort of an echo chamber of our own interests. It needs to be an opportunity to engage actively and openly with the communities we're trying to support. And that might require a little bit more additional cost, but we think that would be a worthwhile investment in that respect.
Thank you, Gideon. I said this was going to be the last question, but actually I realised I'd missed over someone's question in the chat, and we might just have time to fit it in. So Deirdre asked, what is the connection, if anything, to recent news about the financial problems facing the UN? Is this conference somehow doing something that the UN should be doing, or is it just Britain doing something on its own, or do you know anything about that at all?
That's a good question. So what I know is that the UK government is very active in speaking to all the various UN agencies about how they can work more effectively. And I think the UK is one of many countries out there, governments out there, that thinks there are probably too many UN agencies. The system's too fragmented. There are too many international organizations. And so what I know is, separately, they are having lots of discussions with the UN and working together with other European and Western governments to basically challenge the UN system to reform and change. And I think that's part of understanding and recognizing that when we've got less money, we need to spend it better. And actually, the UN isn't often very good about bureaucracy and costs and resource usage. And there's definitely more that can be done. So I don't think it's going to be a significant part of this conference, but it's definitely something we know the government are very active in engaging on.
Thank you. And yeah, we're also hearing those kinds of messages, particularly in relation to some of the global health institutions that we work quite closely on at Results. So I'm sure there'll be more on that coming up. We're just over time, so I'm going to have to stop us there. So thank you, everybody, for your questions. Gideon, massive thank you to you for being with us this evening and to telling us what to expect of this conference. Before we finish, actually, I want to share a link in the chat to a recent blog post that Gideon published on the Bond website about what the UK needs to consider in any new approach to international development, and particularly its financing. As you know, we've been trying to chase the UK government for it to release its budgets and a bit more about its strategy pretty much all year since they announced the cuts. And so we've really not seen enough. And so Gideon's put in that article some really interesting things about what many people in the sector think that they should be doing. So it's given some guidance there. And if any of those, I would urge you to read it. It's got lots of topics that are relevant to the discussions that are going to come up at the conference. So again, it could be a source of food for thought for you, developing some questions that might be relevant to your MP's particular interests. So have a look at that if you can, or if you want to rather. And I'm also just posting in another link to the January action materials, where, as I said, we'll be posting new information as we have it, so that you'll have as much information as we can possibly give you to line you up for your meetings. And some of it you should be able to download and literally just hand over to your MP if that's what you choose to do. So that's it for this evening. Very best of luck arranging your meetings, and thank you as always for your continued support and personal commitment to this important advocacy work in solidarity with the people around the world who hopefully will be benefiting if this conference results in development being done a bit better. So as usual, we'll end the formal part of the meeting now, but I'll keep the line open for up to an extra half an hour if anyone would like to stay and chat informally. If you're not going to be able to carry on chatting to us, do enjoy the rest of your evening. So thank you to all of you, and a big thanks again to you, Gideon.
No worries.
Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Pleasure to meet you all, and your role is more important than ever. So keep up the good work. Thank you so much.